Hi everyone, in this video we will look at the new WAN 2.2 VACE. We had a look at the 2.1 VACE in a previous video. It was already very impressive. We had a look in Rhino, we had a camera going around and looked at the results. Now in this video I will just show you the 2.2 VACE. We're going to look at how it stacks up, but also we're going to look at how we could improve a bit that animation to see how we can get something better out of the Rhino. So in this specific case we're going to look at video to video. So we're going to record a video in Rhino, put it into AI, and it's going to generate a AI video. We're going to use an image from Flux, generate a 3D mesh out of this image, and then we'll tweak it a bit in Rhino before we push it through to WAN 2.2, and we'll see what comes out. We'll also compare WAN 2.1 and WAN 2.2 in terms of quality, but also in processing time, and we will also use Nano to refine some of the images before we push it to mesh into Rhino, and we'll of course using ComfyUI and the model WAN 2.2 VACE and WAN 2.1 VACE. Also, I just noticed that almost 90% of you who are watching my video haven't subscribed yet. If you really enjoy the content, please subscribe. It's free, it doesn't cost you anything, and it means a lot for us to push and get better content to you. So thanks a lot for that. So let's get into it. So if you watch my previous video about WAN 2.1 VACE, this is the models we test with it. And this is basically the 3D, that's the canny, and this is the depth out of this process. Now, with this one is actually WAN 2.1 VACE. So we can see it's actually pretty good and it follows very nicely the camera movement. And here we're switching to VACE 2.2. So you can see that you can actually see the cursor or the orbits on your screen for WAN 2.2. So here's a comparison between the two. We can see that the detail around the texture is a bit better. So here's a stop on camera. So we can see that overall the geometry is clean and there are some detail appearing into the concrete, which is nicely done. One thing so is like we can see that some of the rocks become architecture, become the concrete. So there's a bit of confusion around what is what in the geometry, and that also maybe because of the nature of the geometry and because the architecture is part of the landscape, so the confusion can make sense to a certain extent. But overall, the result for this specific example is quite impressive. In terms of processing time, it's also very efficient. Here's a comparison. I put the comparison on each of those ones. But let's see how it stacks up. And we'll start with a brand new example and start with you on a case study. Okay, so one way you can prepare your file for the 3D is to use Google AI Studio. You can also use ComfyUI and Qwen. There's a new Qwen edit that is actually quite powerful. But in this example, I'm just going to drop my image that I want, and I'm just going to ask it to do maybe a drone shot from the top. Not bad. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, okay, I think it sort of makes sense. Kind of. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to ask it to remove the building itself. And there we go. So what I can do now is I can download it. So now that I have images without the building itself, I'm just going to start doing the landscape. So I'm just going to drop it here. So I'm on AI, and here you can just do image to 3D. We can do also multi-view. I have the basic version. I think you have a couple of credits a day with the basic one, with the free version. So I'm just using this for now. And then you can just drop your image here. Don't really need to put any text, and I'm just going to generate. So it costs 15 credits. So you can see you get a couple of credits when you create an account, and I think it's quite amazing what you can have and test. So it's a good way to test the model to see where it's at. And while it's computing, I'm just going to go back to my AI and I'm just going to do same as this one. I'm just going to drop my original image that was the best resolution, and here I'm just going to do and off we go. So this is quite amazing, you know, how it managed to isolate the building without the landscape. It's doing quite a fantastic job. Now that I have the landscape and the building, I like to do it separately on Triple AI. I found it just work quite well, and then you put it together in Rhino. Okay, so this one wasn't quite successful. I had some done some tests before, and they come up quite nice. If I go to my assets, that what came out, but maybe it's also because of the point of view. So I had it a bit differently, so you can see the image here. That was my original image, and that's what comes out. So I think I was pretty happy with this. So maybe it's a question of playing around with the view in Google AI Studio or in Qwen Edit and just get the right view and test a couple of options. And the other one that came quite nice was this one here. So you can see this is the one with my background, white background, and that's the geometry that came out. So pretty clean, quite interesting. So there's even here sort of the podium here with some glazing. That could be the entrance. One last thing, so when you're happy with the geometry, you can download and export your geometry here. It will ask you in which file. I was fine. OBG is probably the best for Rhino, but you can play around with the various settings to see what works best for you. Okay, so we are now in Rhino. With geometry, I had some issues with my geometry, so I'm still working on best practice for it. This was the original mesh. We can see that there are some interesting detail into that geometry. Pretty amazing to see that amount of detail. Again, it needs to be refined because nothing has been designed or drawn, but it's interesting what has been added with different floors, and this void is quite interesting. So there are some interesting elements built into it that could be food for thought. And I think that's where, when I remodel it, you start thinking about space and how you could shape the shape. So I don't think this is a final stage, but I feel it's a very interesting process where you can have AI sort of questioning some of the form and the shape. But I think the fact that you remodel it will help a lot with the understanding and the functionality of it, of course. Okay, so that's the building. So now I think what I would like to do is I would like to give it a path. So again, because we're going to use ControlNet, it's not going to be 100% accurate. So the geometry doesn't have to be accurate, but what we need to be fully accurate, so is the path we want to give it, and also like sort of, what do we want out of that camera. So Rhino is not the best tool to generate a path overall, but it's very convenient. Okay, so to create a quick animation, we can actually do and go into rendered. So let's have a look at what we can do. So the idea is we're going to start with this image, our video. So we need to have the camera to be as close as possible to that specific image. Okay, and this is the change with the path at the moment. So it sort of need to start somewhere here, and then we're going to rotate around it. So what we can do is we can just go in the right view, and then I'm just going to draw a path around it. Okay, so that goes nice and high, this point, and then I'm just going to manipulate those points to actually get to what I feel like. So this point definitely needs to be a bit further here, a bit higher. So that will be our first frame. So it doesn't need to be 100% accurate, but the more accurate, the better. I'm just going to move this one. Okay, so we're going to go nice and high. And so that's why sometimes it's easier to do. What I was showing you is you just record your screen and you move your camera. One of the change with that with WAN 2.2, we could see that the orbit is showing on your image. So we don't really want that anymore. But I think that should work quite well in terms of height. Let's put it back. I think it will figure it out. Okay, so now that we have this, we also need to give a path, and then here in the middle, we're just gonna give it a point here. That will be our center of the camera. So just turn on this just to see how we are sitting. So I'm just gonna sit it maybe on the front part. So then that's the target of our camera. Okay, so now that we have the target and the path, we can go to camera setup, and then here there is setup path animation. So I click on this, I click on my path, and now my target, which is this point. And now it's asked me how many frames. So we know that, you know, during our test, we know that 77 works pretty well. You can change to something different. 77 was just because one of the script was done on 77, so I just kept stay with this number, but you can be a bit more accurate in the number of frame you want. And then under capture, we can do render. I'm gonna do Arctic. It doesn't really matter because what we're gonna use is the control net, so the depth map or the canny from that video, so it doesn't really matter. And here the viewport is the perspective. 77 frame, and then the type, let's keep it JPEG. It's gonna do an animation. Yeah, press OK. Okay, now what I want is this volume, and I think I will turn off the site. I'll turn off the site because I feel like it could be better if it doesn't have the site. I will test it. So if you go to preview to animation, you can preview it. So we can see that actually when I preview it, it starts from there. So I need to flip my curve so that it starts from there. So let's see. There we go. Bit brutal at the end. So I might just bring it back. Okay, it's very fast. I think it's a very long path for 77 frame, but that's okay. And when you're ready, just record the animation. Okay, and then when I'm ready, I'm just gonna press enter. And so it's gonna render each frame. So then the next step is to open Photoshop. And then you go open. And then you click on the first one and you do image sequence. Now the frame per second, let's keep it at 24. Now if I go to my layer, I'll have this little animation logo. All I have to do is file, export, render video. And then the size here, let's keep it the same size as the other one. So we're just gonna do it 960 by 528. And now I have my animation at the right size, at the right resolution to be compatible with the setup from WAN. I want to thank my Patreon for the support as well, and I will be sharing everything from this video and even an extra test I did, so you can save some time and just have a look at the recording, at the video themselves, but also all the file, JSON file from ComfyUI and the Rhino file if you're interested as well. Okay, so first I want to start with WAN 2.1. So this is the official workflow for WAN 2.1. So if you go on the templates and you go to video, and then there should be WAN 2.1 control video or WAN VACE reference video. So I believe it's similar to this one here. How it looks like for me, it's like this. So we've got the model you need to download, where you need to save them. One important thing is, so this is the workflow I detailed in one of the my previous video. I put the link in this video where I go a bit in more detail, but you just basically, if you follow my video, we would already have download all the models you need. The only one I added from the basic is the Quantas version of it, the GGUF WAN 2.1, and so it's this one here. And we have the load clip loader, and then we have the WAN 2.1 VAE, and this is basically my control panel where I load my animation, make sure it's a format for one, and then I have my control net here with AIO preprocessor that sort of process the lines here. I use Canny, so I just extract the lines out of this video, and this is my reference image. So usually the reference image is the first frame you want to go with. So when you do the animation, you want to sort of match the first frame with the first reference. I find it works much better. After the LoRa, so it's a cause the LoRa from KJ, and it's a cause video. So there's a link as well here that you can download, LoRa. And then we have the model sampling, SD3, the default shift as well, and then a clip loader. So that's where my prompt is, the negative prompt. And then we have our WAN VACE to video, which is a bit of a specific sort of case sampler where you have the control video. You can have control mask as well if you just want to mask one part of the video, and then the reference image. So we've got all that. By default, I kept it as 960 by 528, 77 frames. So the length is basically frames, and then the batch is 1. Now, when you look at this one here, those dimension needs to match. So here it's 960, 528, and then we have 24 frames. So that's the speed of the video, the animation. I'm going to talk a bit more about this, but because I record that animation with 24 frames, it needs to be 24 here. So if you have it as 0, it will take that by default. But if I change it to 1 frame, you can see that the preview will be different because it would be 1 or 3 frames per second. Bring it back here, it's going to do 16. And if I put 0, it will go back to the default, which is 24 frame. Now the frame lengths, you can see there's 77 frames in that video. So same idea. If I put 0 here, it will take by default the number of frame you have in your original video. Now those data here needs to match this one here. So make sure you get the same dimensions. Stay within this range of dimension to test the model first, and then you can increase slowly. But I will try to keep within those frame rate, frame size and resolution for now. And then we have our case sampler. Same, I didn't change anything by default. This LoRa can actually technically allow, I think, even less steps than what I put here. So I put 7 steps, which is a bit more than what I can do, but I just felt the result was a bit better. And then we have our trim video Latin, and then our VAE decoder, and then that goes into our video combine with same idea, 24 frames. So those number of frame, so those number of frame here are matching my original video. So also my control net, so I know what to expect in terms of frame rate. And then I have the file where I want to save it, the format, and also the CRF. Usually I keep that as 19, as technically that's where you get the best results. So worse the video become, but I think that's something you can also test. So that's my workflow for WAN 2.1, and I'll show you later the results of those ones. And then for WAN 2.2, it looks very simple, but there's a lot going on here. So there's a subgraph here. We're gonna look into it. Basically, here I have my width, I have my height, my frame count 77, my image, my reference image, which is load image, and then my video. So I linked my frame count into the frame load cap, so then I know whatever frame value needs to match sort of the original video animation. For some reason here it says 76, whereas here it says 77. I'm not too sure why. You've got difference here because it's the same animation technically, so I'm not too sure why it does that. Frame rate 24, and as I said, like those dimensions are so the same as WAN 2.1. Recommend to try with those dimensions first, even like lower if you want. If your graphic cards, I got a 24 gigabyte of VRAM on this one, so feel free to play around with those dimensions if you feel like it's a bit too hard on your machine. I extract the prompt from the subgraph. So if you go to ComfyUI template, I don't know if it's there yet. Yeah, it's not there. I will put the link below in the description. But basically, in this video here that was released on the 16th of September 2025, we have some really amazing people are doing this video for ComfyUI. Phil and Pers, they're a really famous sort of YouTuber and very out there in terms of AI. They test everything. They have a huge community. And it's basically someone from their community that came up with the workflow. So I'll put the link below with the exact workflow, but the person that came out with that specific workflow is actually Nathan Shipley. This is sort of the official link, and you can just have a look at what he came up with. I'll put the link below in the description. So I didn't really do much out of this specific script, except the fact that I extract the prompt because it just doesn't quite work the same way for me. I feel like for architecture, they're actually using an LLM to generate the prompt, and I've been struggling a bit with the result I got from it. So that's why I extract the prompt out here to be able to access and change the prompt as I want it. But the rest of the settings are pretty much the same as what they had. Here we can change as well between canny and depth. So instead of canny, I can just put this one here, and it will sort of change to depth instead. So you can play around with some of the settings here. And if you want to have a look at the close detail, I highly recommend this video here where they go a bit more deeper. I need to do more investigation on this. One thing that I noticed, so when I open the workflow, is a lot of those inputs here. When I run the script from here, I don't have the error that I don't have the right model. So you actually need to technically open the subgraph, make sure that all your models here are updated with the location you have on your local ComfyUI. See, like I have this one, but it's under the folder 1. So I just need to specify where that file was exactly, and here the same here. So just be mindful of this. If you feel like there's nothing coming out when you press play on this part, it's probably because some of the models here are missing. So make sure you get all those ones correct. All those ones here correct as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this one, and then our LoRa 6, and then also make sure it's here as well. Your VAE here as well, that is correctly loaded, and that's pretty much it. So it's just to some 7 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 model that needs to be loaded from the graph. And I didn't change any settings for now, and you can see it's a much more complex script than the original 1 2.1. One of the reasons is there are actually 2 models, one with noise and one with low noise. So that's why there's quite a more elements. Other than that, not much. The negative prompt stay the same. So have a look at this one, and I think from what I see is I'm probably gonna need to have a look at it in more detail, just because I found the result weren't as good as I expected, but I will talk about it a bit later on. Okay, so we're back in one, and then this time we're just gonna change our image. We're gonna change our video. Select the animation. The frame rate is 24. 77 frame, 76 here. And here we're just gonna keep it 24, keep it the same here. So we check the resolution, so that match our original video and also what we want. I'm gonna go to the other one, same resolution, same frame, number frame, and then here we're just gonna drop it to 24, 77, same resolution, and when we save it here, 24. I'm just gonna ask it to describe my image. So I'm just gonna drop the image here and I'm just gonna say okay, so I'm gonna remove the camera move because we have the camera move already. So I'm just gonna add this and this part. And let's see. Okay, so this is how first one look like with our animation at the right size, 77 frame, post rate at 24, and that's the original image, canny, and that's the result with WAN 2.1 VACE. So actually the result here is not too bad. Some consistency, the path, and let's have a look at 1.2. So original image, path, animation, and that's the result. So it feels like the architecture is a bit more real. There's no wobbly things, but the context is just a bit off. So it started flip the context around. So this part become on the outside, and also it's very dark and contrasty compared to one. Okay, so we have this image here. So that would be our starting point, I guess. It's pretty close to this. Probably need to adjust my camera lens. Okay. So I'm just going to change. All I have to do is change my animation in here. And see what happened. Okay, and there we go. That's the WAN 2.1 VACE. So that's the last test. So we can see the geometry is sort of change a lot and it's not looking very good. So that's the control net. It's not super clear as well, so might be able to tweak the control net to get a bit of a better result. It comes from quality of the image and the fact that the edges are quite hard to read, so something different than an Arctic mode would be better. And then for this one, actually comes up quite nicely. It's just a bit unrealistic really at the back, but the color are quite good, but it just feels a bit too contrasty, overexposed, and it adds a bit of detail that I don't really like. So even if we slow down the camera movement, it's still not quite there yet. So after we went through the whole process of getting those video out, I just wanted to show you a quick example with the upscale process. So on those two examples, it's very hard to see the difference between the upscale, but I promise to you, the first part is a non-upscale and then we shift to an upscale. It's pretty insane because on Premiere, I have a plus 300%, 350%. And on the other one, I only have 150, but the difference on screen doesn't feel too much. But I wanted to run you through it still. So this is, the next part is about what is the script to upscale a video to a potential 2K resolution, any video, and it also work for images. Upscaler, fairly easy. I just have my load upscale model and load video. I load my default video. I don't change any of the settings. I keep upscale image with the model. This workflow works as well for image as well. And then here I have my upscaling. So there's a bit of math to figure out because this one is actually multiplied by 4. So if you don't have this or this part, it will just multiply the resolution by 4. Now I don't want quite that, so that's why I have this 0.6. If it would be 1, it would be an upscale by 4, but I don't want to quite there, so I want a bit more than half to get as close as possible to those dimensions. And when I get as soon as close to these dimensions, I can use those dimensions to actually refine the exact outcome. And there we go, and there my video. Okay, I have to admit, I really like this workflow. The idea of starting with an image, getting into mesh, and the quality of the mesh is absolutely stunning. It's getting better and better. And the depth of the mesh or the quality even on the inside is quite interesting. And what I like is you have a prototype as 3D model that you can iterate through. You can remodel, and by remodeling you rethink about the shape, the space, the openings, and you can start tweaking that geometry. So this image becomes much more interesting than just a 2D flat representation. It really helps with the thinking process, and have it in Rhino just allows to have more freedom in terms of modifying it, double check the proportion, make sure you've got the clearance, all those type of things. Yet I just found the idea of VACE where you can set up a perfect path of the geometry you actually remodel, the accurate elements, and then create a video from it. I really like the idea. I think for me, VACE 2.1 was just amazing, and I was really looking forward for this one. Unfortunately, I found it just falls short in terms of what I want to get to with this one and what I think architecture needs. I think it's doing an amazing job in other aspects of the process, how to do like those, you know, animation video where there are character moving, but for architecture and for the purpose I was experimenting with, I don't think it's quite there, unfortunately. So for me, it's more about maybe getting deeper into the workflow, tweaking it a bit furthermore, do more research to actually get to something better and something quite out there. But you know, when I think about WAN 2.2, I think this model is much better in terms of prompt understanding. So I think there is a lot to leverage. There's just a bit more to work through to get to the results. And in the meantime, while I'm just developing, or like while the community is developing it, again, if you want to join the Discord and give it a go, I think it would be really cool if people start testing it and see what we can do. But I think in the meantime, if I had to do a video tomorrow, I would probably use start image and end image with WAN 2.2. I think it's been amazing model for that. I've been stunned by how good it comes out, and then you can use the upscaling process to get to a nice 2K resolution. And I think this is a great process. But again, I think that the idea of being able to assess the model in 3D, check the clearance, do the architecture work actually, just is great. And I think the idea of start and end frame is great, but it needs to have some deeper connection to what are we trying to achieve there. So thanks again for watching the video. That's it for today. If you want all the file, I will share them all on my Patreon website. But you know, I'll put the link on all the free one. There are a couple of ones you can use. There's also inside ComfyUI. You can use any of those template workflow. They're free. You can download it and give it a go on ComfyUI. Thanks again for watching, and I see you in the next video. Ciao. Okay, for this one, the frame to frame, if you go in the templates and you go into video API, video, first frame, last frame, the video, WAN 2.2, 14B, this is the one I recommend. It's quite amazing, and the results are the one I show you now.